All right, so welcome to our first NUG community call of 2026. My name is Charles Lively, and I'm a science engagement engineer here at NURSE, and joined by other NURSE staff members, Lippy Gupta and Helen He and Aaron Scantlin. And we'll all go through introductions. For today, we've done the welcome, and we're going to provide a few updates as well. And then we'll have a new PI welcome and tips, as well as Helen will discuss the 2026 allocation transition. And Aaron is a cybersecurity engineer here at NURSE, and he's going to give an update on security best practices at NURSE. So before we get started, again, I'm Charles Lively, and as I mentioned, me and Lippy are science engagement engineers. My background is in performance modeling and optimization of applications, specifically focusing on energy-aware computing, and also I have a strong interest in pedagogical training approaches to HPC training and development as well. Um, I earned my PhD from Texas A&M in computer engineering. A little information about me: I'm very plant-based. I don't eat any land animals. I eat seafood on occasion. My favorite sci-fi movie still remains is Contact with Alien, the original, of course, Aliens, the original, a close second. And interesting or not so interesting fact about me is I'm a shamanic practitioner and I study Reiki as well. So, Lippy, did you want to introduce yourself? And
Sure, yeah. So my background is actually in physics. So I did my PhD in physics from University of Chicago, and my undergrad was also in physics. And in the process of doing my PhD, I came to learn about machine learning for surrogate modeling. And that's basically how I ended up at NERSC because I was running tons of simulations for training data at NERSC and just ended up, transitioning into a role here as eventually after actually this year I think it'll be 5 years. Yeah, I think I'll finally hit 5 years. I'm also we were just talking about kind of being as vegetarian as possible, but I love noodles, like any noodle dish. It's like all I ever want to eat is noodles. We, Charles and it's very clear to us that we work, or, we're like, two peas in a pod because we also have the same sci-fi movie as our favorite movie, which is Contact. And my interesting or not so interesting fact is that I raise guide dogs for the blind. And so I had to add a picture of my two babies. The black one is she's gone back to campus to become a breeder, which means she's gonna be making some puppies to raise more future guide dogs. And then the other one, the golden retriever, he's still in training with me. He's not here today, but he's usually here, and he's just like the sweetest, cutest little guy in the whole world.
that's definitely very cool and interesting to me.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Okay, and Helen and Aaron are going to give their intros a little bit later before they present. But our group is the user engagement group here at NURSE. Our lead, our fearless leader, is Dr. Rebecca Hartman Baker, and we have a wide variety of team members in user engagement that try to work with our users to bring forth fun ideas and different training and community calls to assist everyone in our community. So so the Nurse User Group is a community for all Nurse users. So if you have not joined our Nurse Slack, please do make sure you join the NUG Slack. That link is available right here. And then also these slides will be posted on the event page as well. And then we have nurse training. Helen is our training lead here at Nurse. And so you can find out about all the latest trainings that are going to be offered and coming up, clicking on this URL. And then all of our training events are also available in archive, which includes videos as well as any materials and repos that were used for those trainings as well. So It's a valuable resource for our users to be able to go through and understand, and you can learn a lot about different topics in HPC and training. So now we'll just go into a few announcements. Gentle reminder that the 2025 Nurse Early Career Award nominations are still open. Nominations will close on January 30th, 2026. And users that have used nurse resources over the past year and a half that have earned their highest degree after January 1, 2019 are eligible. And we have two categories, the High Impact Scientific Achievement Award and Innovative Use of High Performance Computing as well. So some other announcements and call for participation. Our QIS Quantum Information Science program has a call for proposals that are currently available. Submissions should be made by March 1 for full consideration. Other calls for participation are the application for computational science graduate fellowship that closes today. So if you are a graduate student that is interested, you want to make sure that you apply for that fellowship program. Other calls that we have, the Asker Leadership Computing Challenge proposals are now open, and those proposals are due by not next Monday, but 2 Mondays away, Monday the 26th by 5 p.m. Pacific time. Then some other calls that we also have, applications for the April ALCF Insight GPU Hackathon are due January 1st. And so this will be hosted by Argonne's Leadership Compute Facility, and it'll allow for teams to prepare their codes and boost their performance for insight call proposals. Other events that are occurring apply by January 31st for the International HPC School in Perth, Australia. This will allow for users to, looks like that got copied wrong, actually. My apologies. So it looks like that got copied here. So the call for applications for the International HPC Summer School will take place July 12th to 17th. And this is aimed at graduate students and postdoc scholars as well. We also have a call for the Rising Star in Computational and Data Sciences, and those should be nominated by January 30th. And all of the additional information and links are available in our weekly email that you get every week from Rebecca. So please make sure you read those emails. So some training events that we have coming forward. We'll have a HPC Best Practices webinar and New Patterns in Fortran on January 21st. So feel free to register for that. We also have the new user training and Perlmutter best practices occurring February 11th and 12th. This is a great training event for any new users as well as users that need an update on Perlmutter best practices because our systems and programming environments are constantly changing and being improved. So this allows for users to come in and kind of get a refresher on making the use of resources at NURSE. And so additional training events that we have coming forward is OLCF is going to be offering a training on exploring post-level programming of superconducting qubits. This will be occurring on January 22nd. And anyone that is looking to register for this attend should register by tomorrow, January 16th by 2 p.m. Pacific or 5 p.m. Eastern. I just registered for this morning, so I'm excited about this training. Other training events that we have occurring are Best Modern CMake Practices and Performance Portability with CMake and Cocos. So this will be held on Tuesday, the 24th and the 25th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific, and registration is required. And again, links for those are available in our weekly email as well. Other information, we are hiring. We have a number of different positions that are available. So if you are looking to join our team, please go to look at the careers at Berkeley Lab. And again, all of these links are in the weekly email as well. Nurse is a great place to work. You get to work with a lot of interesting and cool people, nice. And, I always say I don't dream about working, but I think working at nurse is like a dream job. But again, if I win $1 million, I'll receive that. Okay, so that goes for all of our announcements. And so next, Lippy is going to do our PI welcome and tips.
Yeah, so just a couple things we want to sort of familiarize new PIs with, as they're starting with their new allocations here at NERSC. We have a lot of different resources, different, policies. There's a lot of information, and I'm hoping at some point to put together a little guide that will help our new PIs basically onboard into becoming really efficient nurse users and helping their own students and collaborators become good users as well. But in the meantime, just want to kind of remind folks. So one of the main really important tools you should definitely check out and spend some time learning about is Iris. So you can visit Iris at iris.nurse.gov. This is a website that's kind of like a portal into managing several different aspects of your project, your users, what different like permissions they have, how much compute they have, and a lot of other things as well. And we even have a really cool PI toolbox that helps you understand how to change some of these things. Um, that's I'm pretty sure probably linked in Iris, but also available in our documentation, which I'll show in a second. One thing we also want to emphasize is that MFA is absolutely mandatory for all new users, well, all users at NERSC. So definitely make sure you set that up. I would just do that immediately as soon as you get your account and anyone else gets their account. It should just be the first thing they do, change their password and set up MFA. You will get some reminders about your allocation. This is basically the amount of hours that you get. It's kind of like your budget, your hours budget at NERSC. And allocations are charged. So when someone runs a compute, like some compute on the system, they're basically charging hours to that allocation. So it's really important that PIs are the ones that are monitoring that. You can check in Iris. It shows really nice graphs of your burn rate, so essentially how much you're using. This is particularly important because throughout the year, we do some allocation reductions and try to make sure that people who need some more hours are getting those hours. We basically like move things around. But if you need to hold on to your hours because, in September you're gonna get a bunch of data and you're gonna need to analyze it, it's important that you are paying attention to that and letting us know so that we don't remove some of your hours because you haven't used them yet. Some other really important things to know about our system. So first of all, we have a heterogeneous system. So we have GPUs and CPUs. We also have some CPU only nodes. There's basically a little bit of both. So make sure you're reminding your team that there are GPU accelerated nodes, and if they have source code that is able to run on those, they should try to do that. We have a lot of resources to help people compile their codes so that they'll work on the hardware and the operating system that we have here at Perlmutter. Um, and Yeah, I think I mean there's so much more to say about that, but just as a reminder, just because it worked on a similar system somewhere else doesn't necessarily mean it will just work out of the box here. So don't let that be a barrier, though. Make sure you reach out to us or look through our documentation because we want to help you make the best use of our system. We have a lot of software modules, a lot of software that we've already set up, compiled, is ready to go, ready to use on our system. And so you can find out what's available so if you log in and you're on the command line, you can type in module spy, and then the name of a module or module avail, file. It will show you all of the different like Cray, PE, and the CUDA versions available that are already set up to work with our CPUs and GPUs. And then when it's time to run some jobs, writing a job script, it can seem intimidating. It's actually like just a recipe of like, hey, take these many nodes and run this thing on it. And it's not, we want to make sure people aren't terrified. It's not uh, like some really important thing. But we want to make it even easier for you by sharing this job script generator. So it's kind of like a fill in the blank. It's like a HPC Mad Lib where you go through and you're just telling it, okay, I'm going to need this many nodes for this long, blah, 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 and it will help you set up that script. So just to make it even easier. Yeah, and the main thing about that is to help you avoid syntax errors, because honestly, a lot of the times it's just a syntax problem. We have a lot of different data options at NERSC, and we do have some training available about just learning the really, important information about all these different data options because they're used in different ways. One thing that we want everyone to know more than anything is that our Scratch space, while it is the most performant, it's really useful for active computation, but it is temporary. It has a purge policy, which means after you've run something, and actually, I think it's actually closer to 8 weeks. So like around the 8 week mark, if you've run some code and you have a bunch of data sitting in Scratch, it is potentially eligible to be removed. It doesn't mean that at 8 weeks everything is just like immediately removed, but it could be. So we just urge everybody, as soon as you're done with running your data, move it if you can, move it into community file space, community file system. Still extremely performant. You can still run your analysis with data sitting in CFS. So that way you'll just know for a fact that it's not going to get deleted because CFS is permanent while your allocation is active, while you have an allocation active at NERSC. And then if you're done with your data, please move it into HPSS. This is kind of like an archive system. It's very long lasting. It's slow to retrieve. It's not something you want to be like pulling and changing and using actively. But if you're done, you just need to keep this data for a couple years just in case, put it in HPSS. Um, you have the ability to change permissions on CFS directories. Actually, you have a lot of different permissions to change permissions in various different spaces, and we have all of that kind of like how to do that, what you can change, what you can't change, so forth in our documentation. We provide a lot of support for your data, but in the end, it is your responsibility. So we put out our policy information, we put out our best practices. We're constantly hoping that you'll come to us if you have a question. Because it is your responsibility. So make sure if you're unsure about something, you don't know where to put something, you can check our documentation or you can reach out because if something goes wrong, we'll try and help, but we may not be able to. It's always we hope we can do it. So always check our documentation first. Our documentation is extremely thorough. Other centers often use our documentation for their users because it happens to be very thorough. So always check there first. If you really need more help, you can even get an appointment. We do office hours as well. So be on the lookout for those. You can stop in and just ask a question. We sometimes work through whole like scripts or whatever, we can get really into it. And then you can also file a ticket if it's something that may need a little bit more follow-up. We also really encourage everybody to join our Slack space because sometimes people can just like put a question in the ch in the channel. It's a little bit more informal. It's more like crowdsourced. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But it is a good space to just like connect with other people and see how other people are using the system. And also sometimes it's like is this problem just me or is are other people seeing this? And it can be kind of helpful to be like, oh, okay, something is down or someone else has seen this problem and NERSC is working on it. Another really important place to check that is our center status webpage, which is on our NERSC website. And so that is like up-to-date real-time information, like, oh, we've seen a problem and we're fixing it, or oh, there's an outage or something like that. That's another place I ask people to check first. And then the last thing is just make sure you acknowledge your use of NERSC in your papers. If you have any kind of publication, even, presentations, posters, anything, we like to see what kinds of science is coming out of this facility. It's first and foremost a scientific research user facility. So it's really great for us when people cite their use of NERSC because we're able to find that and use it to advocate for, hey, our system is being used for this amazing science. Please, make sure we stay employed, we stay uh, in business so that people can keep doing what they're doing.
Keep the funding
Um,
coming in.
Thanks.
And also, yeah, make sure for the PIs to make sure that, a lot of times their students or members on their project will, spin their wheels. Please make sure they do reach out for either a one-on-one virtual appointment and join the user Slack as well. It offers so much help. And also another thing about data, please make sure you store copies of your data off of nurse systems as well, too. So that's just lots of good tips. So thanks, Slippy. And all right, next we will continue with the AY transition by Helen. And Helen, would you like to introduce yourself and say a few words?
Yeah, sure. My name is Helen He, and I am HPC consultant at NERSC, and also I'm the user training team lead in the user engagement. I work in the user engagement group, as well as Charles and Libby. The consultant, what we do is I'm one of the front-facing people that answer user tickets. And in the back end, we do, documentation, managing software, providing training, and basically working with users for so that you would run effectively and efficiently on our REST systems. I've been one of the main user focus point for the past. Besides Palmer, I was the Corey and Hopper and Franklin as the main focus point for the flagship systems at NERSC. Um, so I've been on the organizing committee, giving tutorials, training, and with the say program chair for Cray user group because of my role of the nurse system. We have had Cray system for a long term, very long time. So I'm organizing a Cray user group conference, and also I'm on the OpenMP language committee. I've offered various OpenMP tutorials at conferences. Before joining NERSC, I worked at Scientific Computing Group at the Computational Research Division, as overall at the LBS Computer Science, I think department. And I have a PhD in climate science, based primary physical oceanography, and a master in computer science. My research interests, user training and education, software programming environment, programming models, porting, benchmarking, and climate models. I like seafood, all sorts of seafood is my favorite. My favorite sci-fi movie, Back to the Future, all three movies.
That's
Very classic.
yeah, that's a good
Uh,
one.
Interesting fact, the co-author of a book, OpenMP Common Core, making OpenMP Singapore again, and published by MIT Press. So that's my brief introduction.
All right.
And should I go on with my talk or
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, I'll go ahead.
then
You should be able to
then
share
we'll
now.
leave Aaron's introduction before his talk. So let me share my screen. Again, I will be talking about all about allocation year transition from 25 to 26. So basically, I'll cover what is the allocation for 2026 in the whole transition process, what happens on the start day of the transition, what are the changes, especially in program environment for the new year, and then provide a few checklists if you're continuing PI, a new PI, or a discontinued project. The allocation year, it normally starts the third Wednesday of each year in January and ends the following Tuesday. Keep in mind the allocation from last year do not carry over. So it's a new brand new pools of your allocation hours. The email of award has been out the week of December 15. Everyone, all the PIs should have received an email. And as Rippy has mentioned also, there are CPU awards and GPU awards. They're separate, and you have to specify which allocation you want to use for your jobs. They are not transferable as well. So usually what happens at AY transition, in our big database, everybody has used the Iris. So Iris has all the information there about your project, your users, your allocation hours, CPU, GPU, and storage hours. So at that day, Iris needs to be updated with the new allocation information. Then all our computational systems need to sync up with this data, active data. And then we will clean up some old jobs that do not carry over with the new allocations. We usually have some system maintenances. I have a separate page on system maintenance, what we do. This year on Promoter is a pretty long one. For there are also usually we will have some either policy changes, software changes, etc. So this year, instead of one big long page, we have several news items. So you find them in the NERSC user news. And these are a few of those that already have been published, and we will expect more to come, one, for example, on the programming environment changes. And then you could also see those information in the weekly emails. So the transition doesn't start on the day, it starts before. So for example, the last week before the allocation year starts at 20, there will be the last week before the new allocation year, there will be no new user account creation or validation. And also the allocation project request, which is called ERCAP. ERCAP stopped after November 1st for any of the new AY 2025 requests. The most importantly, if you're a PI and you're a continuing project, there's a deadline, which is tomorrow, that you have to do. You have to select users who will be continuing in the next year, and you have to check who has access to the premium QoS. You have an inherited list of last year's, but we would ask you to update those. There's an instruction you can follow. And what happens if you don't do this by tomorrow? All users except the PI will be removed from the project, which may cause some user jobs, because if a user is not renewed, their jobs in the queue will be deleted. So make sure to do it by tomorrow, please. Then let's talk about what actually happens on the day. As I mentioned, Iris, you will have about 2.5 hours downtime. And once it's done, all users, you need to log out and log in to see the new data. Promoter maintenance, this one is really long because we're going to do some OS upgrades, some of the system software changes, and as well as a few user software changes. There's another slide on that. Jupyter is not having maintenance, but however, since most of the Jupyter jobs run on login nodes or compute nodes of Perlmutter, so when those nodes are offline, and you are not getting access for starting your Jupyter. So this is not a continuous outage, but you may see intermittent Jupyter in access. All other system at NERSC and service will be up. Again, the jobs, what are the jobs going to be deleted on Perlmutter is any jobs associated with non-continuing projects. Jobs with a continuing project, but the user is no longer a member for the project. And premium jobs, if the user does not have access to the premium QoS. There's the overrun jobs, which apply to the projects and users do not have remaining allocations for the 2025 allocation year. And if a job has been held for more than 12 weeks, those jobs will be cleaned up as well. And when will we charge for the new allocation year? The first day, Wednesday is free, and Thursday, the first, second of third, when permit returns from the scheduled maintenance, whichever is later. At this point, more likely it will be when permit returns from the scheduled maintenance because this our last estimated to last for about 2 days. So next, I'll talk about programming environment changes. As I mentioned, this is a 2-day maintenance. Most of the changes will not have noticeable impact to users. For example, underlying operating systems, Slurm configuration changes, some staff-provided software, and the parameter scratch file system control software, and then system management software, etc. These will not have noticeable impact. There will be some noticeable impact, I mean, that actually impact user applications that include CPE is Cray Programming Environment Module, and the NVIDIA GPU driver and the CUDA toolkit module. The purpose of doing those during the maintenance allocation start is that we have utilizing this chance to upgrade software so that we can bring in new improvements and features, and that also to minimize system downtime because those things need to happen during system maintenance. So most of those things, again, not having your application will still run as usual, but we do recommend users to verify your software environment after the new year. We do have anticipate issue related to users using number.cuda. I have another slide on that. And then we may send targeted communication regarding those issues to select users. Everything changes, the list of changes also, also future programming ranges. There's a page called Parameter Timeline. In there, you'll find detailed information of what has been changed, software and hardware or configurations. So it's a very good reference page. For the software changes, these are the versions explicitly. There'll be OS version / SP5 to SP6. GCC version will change from 13 to 14, and Cray Programming Environment CPE version from 24 to 25. There's a release notes there you can find link to. And most importantly, that the Cray MPitch will be a change from based on MPitch 3.4 towards a version based on MPitch 4. So that's a huge update. Other than that, there'll be Cray libsci, HDF5, Cray NetCDF, performance tools, etc. There'll be default version changes as well that you can find in the release notes. GPU driver, so that's the one that's gonna affect code number that version, and that I'll explain in the next slide. There's also default CUDA toolkit module change. So here, what is this? Number.CUDA, we actually expect this to crash due to the reason that we're going to update NVIDIA GPU driver. The reason is that there's a transition from number.CUDA to number-CUDA. And it allows you to still use number.CUDA, but it requests a version to be newer than 0.0.63 version. So we have provided 2 workarounds for users. The first one is create a new environment with either number version or newer than 0.63 or using the module called number-CUDA. We prefer that you create a new environment instead of updating an existing environment because updating is not trivial usually. Another option is that if for users who are not able to easily create a new environment, we have provided a number-CUDA-580 patch module. So by loading that module, it will work around the issue. What it does is that this module will add a path to the Python path environment variable, which would call a special module, and that module would apply a patch during the Python process startup time before interacting with the NVIDIA driver that would result the crash. So either option would work. There's more details in this page. This page is to be published. We'll publish it at the AY transition, AY start. So on this page, you'll find the background information, the workarounds, and how to check your number version, how to trigger a crash, and the transition, more information about the transition from number.CUDA to number-CUDA. So besides that, we do not anticipate other user-related issues. But in any case, if you saw your job runs before and there's any issues compiling, running, please open a user ticket to us. So now for the last part of this presentation, I'll talk about a few of the checklists. First one is for continuing project PIs. I mentioned a task to do by tomorrow, but other than that, starting on that new allocation year date, please go in and into the iris and check the CPU and GPU allocations. So the percentage allowed, we actually they are inherited from last year, but you can update. The hours are not inherited due to the reason, the absolute amount of allocation hours may be different. Still, the PIs can go in and update those percentages hours that for each individual users. If you don't specify the default, I think it's 10% of the allocation. And if you do specify both percentage and hours, percentage takes precedence. If you only specify hours, then that hours is what the users can get. Another thing is please also verify the premium selections of your user list. Then after starting on January 21st, when there are, when you can add new users, there's instruction on the notes documentation page. And then once you add new users, they can be brand new users, they can be existing those users. Then if they're brand new users, there'll be also on your, for example, in your Iris Rows tab, and scroll all the way down. Once those users are vetted by DOE, and you still need to go in there and approve those users to be added to your project. So there's also approve instructions for that. And if there are users in your project that are not continuing, and PIs also we would also like the PIs to manage their data. If you're a brand new user, everything would start on January 21st. Before that, you won't be able to see the allocation information for your project. Beginning January 21st, you go in, you'll see yourself in that project. So you would start to add the new users. Again, similarly, you would start adding new users and approve requests from authorized users. The new users usually can be approved, not approved, vetted, usually take up to a week or so. Most users could be even vetted within 2 business days. Then again, you will see them in the Rows tab, and you again approve them to be added to your project. And since this is a brand new project, you would need to go in and set percentages and hours and premium permissions for each of your users. Okay, if a project is discontinued, you have 60 days to wind down, and then during those 60 days, you're still able, same as users, you're still able to log in to the systems, log into Iris, log into HPSS, but you don't have the permission to run batch jobs. Then 60 days ends March 20th. So by March 20th, make sure that copy your old project data to non-NUG locations and shut down some running services like Spin, cron jobs, and save data to somewhere else. So I think with that, I am done for my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Awesome. Thank you,
And
Helen. And so next we will turn things over to Aaron. And let me get back to my window. So Aaron, if you want to give a little introduction to yourself.
Sure. Howdy, everybody. Aaron Scantlin, Nurse Security. I've been in the security field for about 10 years now, although I'm a relatively recent transplant to research computing. Um, Cut my teeth doing incident response and forensics at the University of Missouri. Started up there, or I guess laid the groundwork for their CMMC environment that has now got over 200 users, and it's doing great. It's like seeing your baby grow up. I love to see it. And I've been here for about 3-ish years now, I guess. So do a lot of things on the day to day. My current focuses are there, but essentially I help manage, develop, maintain the security systems that help make science go fast. I love sweet things. Give me all the sweets. I think Starship Troopers is hilarious. Can you believe that there are people that don't realize that it is a parody? And I am the first person to get a supercomputing conference tattoo. If you catch me while I'm in town sometime, maybe you'll get to see it. We can go ahead and close that slide. I will switch out for my own. Alrighty, I am guessing we can see the slide deck on the screen, correct? We'll assume so. Um, cool. So personally, I like to start all of my talks off with why you should bother giving me your attention. HPC systems are a very attractive target to at least certain types of malicious actors. We've got a lot of resources at our disposal. There's that old saying, that which can be used for good can also be used for evil. Cryptocurrency mining is a thing that still exists. Denial of service attacks are something that our fat pipes are pretty well suited for. Some attackers are looking for unpublished research data. Some attackers might even be looking to do some research using some embargoed hardware. We're also a pretty attractive target just by virtue of being in .gov internet space. There are people out there that don't really care for the government and focus on those particular resources. Suffice to say, there are plenty of reasons why someone might want to gain access to NERSC resources with, less than savory purposes in mind. Now, we're all probably familiar with the term multi-tenancy, but how many folks think of the security implications of that? Probably not many. Running untrusted or even resource-intensive code on login nodes could bring performance down on that node for others, or even take that login node down entirely. Storing malicious code on a shared file system, when combined with other vulnerabilities, could enable that code to touch files that belong to others. So, in short, not only are you at greater risk by virtue of using a shared system, you contribute to that risk. We all have a responsibility to use the resources we have at our disposal in a responsible manner. Now, advanced persistent threat or APT groups totally exist, but to be completely honest with you, most real world incidents are born from very mundane security failings. Reused passwords are a tried and true favorite. This is less of a concern with Perlmutter since we have MFA enabled for all user accounts. It's more of a concern for things that are hosted on like Spin. If you've not heard of Spin, you should definitely look that up. It's a service that NERSC offers. The consultants would surely be happy to tell you about it. Um, let's see. Leaking secrets in public code repositories is another really big one. If you're curious to scan your own repositories for this, there's a tool out there called Trufflehog. I've included a link to it in the presentation notes, and the slides will go out with all of the NUG content that comes out today. But you can use that repository or use the code within that repository, I should say, to scan your own repositories and make sure that there's no secrets hiding in there, or at least secrets that are easily identifiable by a threat actor. Trufflehog is often what threat actors also use to look for secrets in repos. The last big one is dependencies being out of date or compromised. Out of date dependents or out of date components have vulnerabilities that can be exploited. Software can become compromised through the supply chain. Probably people are familiar with the XZ utils thing that happened last year. If you're not, look it up, XZ utils. And software can also be used intentionally maliciously. So folks can typo squat a particular package name. I'll give an example of that a little bit later on if you're not familiar with that. And let's be honest, you don't need me to tell you that you're going to have a not fun time if your account is tied to a compromise in some way, shape, or form. I don't want to say it'll be a bad time. I like to think I'm a fun person. I'll try to make it as painless as possible, but no one's going to have a fun time. So, with that, let's go over some best practices for NERSC users. First up, the boring but valid stuff. And I need to hurry it along a little bit. So I'm sorry if I rush some of this stuff, but check out the presentation notes afterward because they're chock full of good information. The NERSC AUP is the overarching document that is used to determine what is and is not allowed at NERSC. It's a lot of the same stuff that you hear at other places. Don't share your account. You're going to hear that a few more times today. Don't be a jerk, yada, yada, yada. I'm sounding somewhat dismissive of it, but it's more that I trust folks here have read the AUP. If you have not, read the AUP. That is your first piece of homework. Something to pay attention to in there is the prohibited data categories. So, nothing against our sister labs that I lovingly refer to as the Boom Boom Labs, but I love that NERSC helps foster open science. And as a result, there are a number of data categories that are strictly forbidden from being processed on or through NERSC systems. Classified or controlled military defense information, classified or controlled information of any kind, to be completely honest. Export controlled, ITAR, there's a few other things in there. We also have a very slim list of prohibited software, Gaussian, Magic Wormhole, and Warp Terminal. So please don't use those things here. Warp Terminal makes itself pretty well known, thankfully. But again, you are all aware MFA is required for accessing NERSC resources. There are tools out there that NERSC users have created that essentially remove your need to supply a one-time PIN. NERSC security is aware that these exist. We do not encourage their use. We do not bless them. We do not support them. But I'll be honest, we really can't detect it if you're not using it. So honestly, we become aware of these, and so far we've let sleeping dogs lie because right now, at least we can see the code that it's being built with. If there's a severely out-of-date dependency, we can notify that resource, creator, and please beg them to update their thing. But honestly, if you want to not have to enter your OTP as often, use SSH proxy. That's our blessed way of doing it. But I really feel like I can't say very much, right? The big reason why those sorts of packages aren't good is because so multi-factor authentication is supposed to be combined of something you know and something you have. If we're including biometrics, it's also something you are, but that's out of scope for this one. Whenever you use these tools that you give your OTP secret to, you're removing that. It's just one thing at that point, right? So if somebody comes over, bops you on the head, takes your laptop, all of a sudden, they might be able to directly access NERSC as opposed to they'd have to pop you on your head, take your laptop, and take your phone, and unlock both of them, blah, 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 blah. You see where I'm going with that? So what we can do a pretty good job of, though, is detecting account sharing. Again, this is strictly forbidden. However, we do recognize that there are situations where a shared account is needed. So for those cases, we have collaboration accounts. More on those a little bit later. Your password for your NERSC account should be unique and strong. When I say unique, I mean it's 2026, and if you're not using a password manager, you need to change that. Talk to me about that later if you need to. Notice, however, I didn't say random and complex. I'm a much bigger fan of the passphrase nowadays. 6 random words strung together with hyphens. This has the benefit of being computationally expensive to crack while still being potentially memorable and easy to type in an interactive prompt. Granted, some password strength checks are going to still require symbols and whatnot. This doesn't work everywhere, but it's handy stuff. The more on the collaboration account is now. Basically, what I said in that previous slide. We have things called collaboration accounts that are intended for account sharing. They can only be accessed via SSH keys that are generated by the users that are associated by that collaboration account. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't actually know the process for getting a collaboration account, but I do know that the awesome consultants here can help direct you to the right place. So if you need one, you know who to ask. Now, on some occasions, we've actually seen folks hack, quote unquote, themselves by setting permissions to be too open. There's always at least two ways to do something in computing, and there's usually n minus one secure ways to do those things. Will chmod 777 make the file you want to make available to someone available? Yes. Is it secure and should you do it? No. Work that you're doing yourself should probably have permissions of 700 or 600. Collab accounts should probably be 060, not 066, not 006. You're going to have secrets that you're going to need to use in various situations. Secrets on disk should be in directories that only secret owners have access to. When possible, don't store secrets on disk. Inject secrets at runtime and make them short-lived. Do we need to transfer some small files? SCP is a possibility. We've also got these cool utilities called give and take if you need to share some potentially sensitive data. For larger file transfers, use Globus. Specifically, use Globus on the DTNs. That is where we make sure you get the best throughput. As far as data handling and retention is concerned, again, Lippy already kind of talked about this in her segment, but users are responsible for backing up their own data. We try our absolute best, but we make zero guarantees for Scratch and global file systems. Just because it's on the cluster doesn't mean it's backed up. We have HPSS for long-time archival. That's another area that I actually don't know the specifics on how users get hooked up with. But again, talk to your neighborhood-friendly consultants and they will be happy to point you in the right direction. Secrets management is a big deal, capital B, capital D. As I mentioned earlier, secrets being unintentionally leaked is one of the leading causes of breaches. For secrets that you have to store on disk, store them in a particular directory, probably a .secrets folder in your home directory. chmod 700, that directory, chmod 600, the files that are inside of it, chmod 400 for private keys when it's appropriate. For batch jobs, read the secrets file in the batch file, export it to an environment that's only in that job. That avoids your secret being dumped into logs or any other tracing, and then unset it on exit. I think that actually might get done for you since the compute nodes get wiped after every run anyway. For Jupyter, read the secret file or prompt for the secret file. Never print it out. Clear your outputs before sharing notebooks that might have these secrets in them. SFAPI tokens are great for automation. I'll talk a little bit about that if I have time. And void environment variables for secrets where you can. Environment variables are just don't use those for secrets. If you're doing that, stop. Automation is something many folks are interested in, and at NERSC, we specifically have the SFAPI. This can be used in a variety of ways to remotely access and manage NERSC resources. What you can do and where you can do it from depends on the security level of the API client that you request. But in general, more power equals less IP space and more frequent renewal being required. In general, you are probably going to leverage APIs in some of your work here at NERSC. Guard those keys like you would guard a private SSH key. Let's see. I'm going to speed along there. Let's see. Trust in software is a real funny thing, right? The fact that you can git clone a repo and run the code on our systems from a productivity point is super cool. From a security standpoint, it's absolutely terrifying. When possible, stick to trusted software. What do we mean by trusted? Could be a lot of things. Vendor, industry, or peer-supported and maintained code is generally fair game for trust. Reported security issues that are being addressed means the software is being maintained in good faith, and that counts for something. A large user base in itself isn't a mark of trust, but to some degree, millions of others are running this code is a pretty good defense. Honestly, some of you are probably working in fairly niche problems where there's not even thousands of users of a given software. In these cases, something like actually knowing who wrote the code is a fair maker of trust as well, assuming they're a good software developer. I've got some other notes in the presentation notes that you should look at for all of these slides. I'm going to skip to the end. I guess probably don't have time for questions, but long story short, NERSC Security is here to help. If you want, I encourage you to reach out to the entire group so we can all weigh in. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you can reach out to me. I'm in the NERSC user Slack. You can also email me. My email address is there. Like I said, these slides will go out with the NUG resources, and I yield my time to the floor.
All right, thank you, Aaron. And all of the slides are posted, but did we have any questions for Aaron? If there were any questions about security? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for a great presentation, both Helen and Aaron. That concludes our first NUG community call of 2026. So Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if you have any questions, or submit a ticket for consulting support. But other than that, happy computing.